It was a bustling Friday morning at an airport in New York City. Passengers filled the terminals, racing to their gates, eager to board their flights and head off to various corners of the world. Among them was a well-dressed man, confident in his stride, who approached the check-in counter with the ease of someone who had done this 1,000 times before. The man, Marcus, was no stranger to the world of luxury travel. He had always been accustomed to flying in style, spending his days jet-setting between business meetings and high-profile events. But today, as he walked up to the counter, something seemed off. The agent behind the desk, a young woman in her 20s, looked at him with a cold stare that made Marcus pause for a moment. "Good morning, sir. May I have your boarding pass and identification, please?" she asked, her voice flat. Marcus handed over his documents, a slight frown forming on his face as he noticed the way she looked him over. She scanned his ticket and then hesitated, tapping on the keyboard for a few seconds. Marcus was used to this. After all, his ticket was booked under the first-class section. He had flown first class so many times that he didn't even think twice about it. But this time, something felt different. "I'm sorry, sir," the agent finally said, her tone uncomfortably polite. "There seems to be an issue with your ticket. It's showing that you're not allowed to board in the first-class section." Marcus was taken aback. His ticket was solid. He had upgraded from economy the day before, paying extra for the privilege. He had received a confirmation email, and everything had seemed perfectly in order. "What do you mean?" he asked, trying to maintain his composure. "I have a first-class ticket." "I'm afraid I can't allow you to board in that section," the agent repeated. She glanced at her screen again before looking up at him with an apologetic but distant smile. "It's policy, sir. You'll have to board in economy class." Marcus, who had built an entire career around confidence and resilience, felt a sting in his chest. He couldn't understand what was happening. He had traveled in first class for years, and he had never experienced anything like this. Something wasn't adding up. He tried to stay calm. "Could you check with your manager? This doesn't make any sense. My ticket is confirmed for first class." The agent hesitated, but eventually reached for the phone on her desk and dialed her manager. As the phone rang, Marcus glanced around the terminal, trying to stay composed. He could feel eyes on him, but he didn't care. He had no idea what was going on, but he knew that he had to stand his ground. After a moment, the agent hung up the phone and motioned for him to step aside. "Please wait here. Someone will assist you shortly." Minutes ticked by, and Marcus' frustration began to rise. He wasn't just a man waiting for an answer from the airline anymore. He was a black man waiting for answers in a situation that seemed all too familiar. He had faced racism before, but this was different. It wasn't overt. No one had outright insulted him. But the feeling of being singled out, the subtle yet unmistakable tension in the air, was undeniable. He stood there in silence, his mind racing with thoughts of what might be happening. Had someone in the system made a mistake? Was this a clerical error? Or was there something more insidious at play? His ticket had been confirmed. So, why was he being treated like an outsider? After a long pause, a man in a well-tailored suit approached the counter. He introduced himself as the manager and offered a firm handshake. He looked to be in his late 40s, his face weathered from years of dealing with customer complaints and demanding situations. "Mr. Williams, I understand there's a bit of a mix-up with your ticket," he said, his voice calm but firm. Marcus nodded, trying to maintain his composure. "I don't understand. My ticket clearly states that I'm in first class. I've upgraded it already. Why am I being asked to board economy?" The manager glanced at the screen, then at Marcus. He was polite, but there was something in his eyes that made Marcus uneasy. It was as if he had seen this scenario unfold before, but had never really cared to address the underlying problem. "Well, Mr. Williams," the manager began, "we've had some issues recently with our first-class accommodations. And unfortunately, there's a policy that states if a ticket's validity is questioned, the passenger must be reassigned to economy until further notice. It's just a precaution." "But that's not right," Marcus said, his voice rising slightly. "I'm a paying customer, and I have the proper documentation to support my seat. I'm not going to accept being treated this way." The manager's face tightened, but before he could respond, Marcus continued, "I've been flying for years, and I've never been treated like this. Do you know how many times I've been on a plane in that very seat, in that very first class section?" Marcus took a deep breath, try and stay calm. "Why is this happening to me today?" The manager's posture shifted. He hesitated, then looked at Marcus, almost as if he were seeing him for the first time. "I'm sorry if you feel like you're being unfairly treated, but we have to follow protocol," he said, his voice now colder. "Please proceed to the gate for boarding. We've made arrangements for you." Marcus knew that this wasn't about protocol. He had been singled out. He had been racially profiled, and no one had the courage to admit it. He knew the sting of discrimination well, and this felt all too familiar. "Fine," Marcus said, his tone sharp, "but I'm not letting this go. I will escalate this issue. You'll hear from me, and I'll make sure the world knows what happened here today." As Marcus walked toward the gate, his anger simmering beneath the surface, he couldn't shake the feeling that this moment would haunt him for a long time. The subtle racism, the discrimination masked behind a bureaucratic veil, was a reminder of how far society still had to go. As he entered economy class, Marcus couldn't help but notice how the world around him seemed oblivious to what had just transpired. People were chatting, laughing, oblivious to the injustice that had just unfolded before them. But Marcus knew that he wouldn't let it slide. This wasn't just about a flight, this was about a broader issue that needed to be addressed. The flight took off without incident, but for Marcus, the journey had just begun. He would fight this, not just for himself, but for every person who had ever been treated unfairly, who had ever felt the sting of discrimination. As the plane soared through the clouds, Marcus made a vow to take this fight beyond the confines of an airplane. He would make sure that his story was heard, and that people understood that racial profiling was not just an inconvenience, it was a painful reality that many Black people faced every day. If you've ever experienced or witnessed discrimination, don't stay silent. Speak out and make your voice heard. Share this story and let others know that we all have a responsibility to stand against racism no matter where it occurs. Join the conversation, and don't let these injustices go unchallenged. For more powerful stories like this, subscribe to Expect Stories.